Welcome to another tutorial on the Boodlebag platform. In this tutorial, we're going to cover booking time in shared spaces. So let's get started. So at this point, we assume that you already have a Boodlebag merchant account. So I'm going to log in with a merchant account. And this is in particular a merchant account with the shared spaces feature for renters. Now, there are two methods by which you can secure a space, time in a space. The first is by making a space reservation, and the other is by what we call space bookings. The key difference between these two is space bookings are done through the business management software in Boodlebag, which simultaneously books an appointment and secures a space for that appointment, all within the appointment scheduler within the business management software in Boodlebag. Whereas the space reservation only reserves time in that space. We're going to start with space reservations first, and then later on we'll take a look at space bookings. So once you are logged in to your merchant account, there are two ways you can get to do space reservations, or get to the space scheduler to be able to do space reservations. One is right from the home page. You can use the quick access links to get to the scheduler, or you can go from the top menu and scroll down to space scheduling, and it gets you to the same place. Once here, you would want to select the space that you want to book an appointment in, and once you do that, you'll be able to see all the appointments that are currently scheduled within that space. Just a little bit of information here. You'll see also that it tells you what the booking capacity of that space is. Now, if you're not familiar with the term booking capacity, we suggest that you revisit the tutorial on creating spaces, where we go over all the terms used in defining spaces. As you can see from the two appointments that we have scheduled, you see how it says privacy? This is because these appointments are booked by another business other than the business we're logged in as. So Terry Rents Dan Space, that test account, is not the account that has these two appointments. So for privacy, we only show you that there's an appointment booked there, but not who has those appointments. If it were appointments by this business, it would actually state the business name or the person that has that appointment within this business. So now let's try to schedule an appointment within the space. So I'm going to pick a time on the 2nd, and I'm just going to make a reservation. Actually, why don't we do a time on the 1st? Let's do that. The time on the 1st, and we will pick 10 a.m. for the appointment for the reservation I want to make, and we're going to make it a time block. So we'll make it 10 a.m. until say 1 p.m. Okay, now when you're making a reservation, you could specify that you want to reserve all time slots, all booking units within that space or within that time block. So remember how we have the 3 for the booking capacity? Whenever you have more than a single appointment or a single schedule that can go into the space at the same time, you have the option to secure all spots or not. So if you check this, then no one else will be able to book simultaneously in that spot. And if you leave that unchecked, then you would only be getting one time slot. Now, you might be asking why you would want to have multiple appointments be able to take place at the same time in the same space. It all really comes down to the use case for the business. So an example is ballroom dance studios, where you have multiple private lessons taking place at the same time, all sharing the same big ballroom dance floor. In that case, you might want to have your spaces configured as having multiple simultaneous appointments that can take place at the same time using the booking units, rather than creating a separate space for each unit, which would essentially make things a lot simpler. The lock feature allows you to be able to lock this reservation so that when bookings take place, bookings will not override the reservation. So you have the ability to reserve a space before you book an appointment. So you could reserve a space for a time block. Say, for example, if you wanted to have specific times that you teach and want to be able to guarantee yourself more of a chance that you're going to get those times. So prior to actually having your customers book their appointments, you can reserve those time blocks, and then later on when you start booking those appointments, or your customers start booking those appointments within the appointment scheduler in the business management software, those bookings will then overwrite the reservations, taking time blocks out of that. If you don't want that to happen, then you would lock the reservation that you make, in which case it is not going to be allowed for bookings to now book over those time slots. That's what this is used for. Now, when you go through the tutorial for the business management software, you'll learn more about this, but that's essentially what this does. Is it prevents this reservation from being broken up into parts by the appointment scheduler within the business management software. So I'm just going to reserve this time block from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Just for a single time slot and unlocked. And now we can see that we have that time slot reserved. And that's as simple as it is to make a reservation. Now, if for any reason you were going to schedule in the time that wasn't allowed, so for example, in this case, we have a capacity of 3. If you then try to schedule past, actually, let's do this. Let's delete this. And then let's schedule it and make it locked so you can see what it's like when we try to schedule when it's not allowed. You'll get a error message saying you cannot schedule. I'm just going to pick any time here and then try and book over that time. So we're doing 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And I'm going to lock it and reserve it. Then I'm going to try and do another schedule for the same time, 7 a.m. to 8. And it doesn't have to be exact same time, it just has to be any time that conflicts. So then let's do 7 a.m. to 7:30, just so it's not the exact same time. And I want to leave it unlocked and whole space, and just got one, not the whole space checked, and I say reserve. But you know what, I didn't do this right. I needed to actually book the whole space, not just lock it. So let's pick an earlier time. So we'll pick 2 a.m. and let's go till 3 a.m. and we want the whole space, which automatically locks it. And then if I try to book the same or something that overlaps, 2 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. and I say reserve, you can see it gives us an error message. You may not have overlapping reservations. And it also presents the error message at the top. So what we just tried to do was create a reservation that overlapped with the current reservation. It wouldn't allow you to do that. Now, the same thing would happen if the number of booking units had already been taken. It will give a similar error message saying that that time slot is not available, so you can book in that time slot. So now we're going to schedule this time slot for 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Reserve it. Now we have it reserved for 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And you can see here it tells us that it's our space, it's our time that we've scheduled. We can see our name here, whereas here we don't see our name there. So that's as easy as it is to do a reservation. At this point now we have that time secured, and we can then go ahead and plan to use the space at that time, and nobody else can use the space at that time. So now let's log in as the space owner and take a look and see how things look like from the space owner perspective. And similarly, we go into the business space scheduling, and we look at Studio 2, and we can see the space is scheduled by Terry Rents Dan Space. Now you can see here that we can see the businesses that have scheduled the space in all cases. The only reason we can is because this is the space owner that we're logged in as. And the space owner can always see who has the space, whereas each renter can only see when they have a space, and then all the other times will just show as private. But we can definitely know that those times are booked. So that's about it with making a reservation. So now let's take a look at canceling a reservation that we've made. So I'm going to log in as the renter. And then I'm going to go into Space Reservations, and I'm going to pick Studio 2 at Lisa's Dance Biz. And I'm going to try and cancel this reservation. And there you go. It's been removed. And if I go back to and I go into business space scheduling, and I go take a look at Studio 2, you can see the booking is gone. Okay, now let's go to Studio 2 and see some of its configuration. So we can see Studio 2 is for mixed use, and in particular I want us to take a look at what the cancellation policy is for Studio 2. So the cancellation policy for Studio 2 is 24 hours. We want to change that to 48 hours and save it. Okay, now we're going to try and log back in as the renter. And we're going to try and schedule an appointment that is outside of the 48-hour range. And by the way, notice how we got this error message because we didn't select a space. So we have to definitely select a space. Then we're going to try and schedule an appointment. So we want to schedule it such that it is inside of 48 hours. So I'm going to schedule it on the 1st. I'm just going to pick a time here. 7 a.m. to noon. And I'm not going to book all the units, and I'm not going to lock it. I'm going to reserve it. And then now if I try to delete this, let's see what happens. We get an error message that says the cancellation deadline has passed. It can't be deleted. And we also have that same error message up here, so you can have that more persistent. So the system is able to enforce your cancellation policy that you set for that particular space. So if you are unfamiliar with the different settings for cancellation policy, you can definitely review the tutorial on creating spaces, but there are several options for the cancellation policy, and the system will enforce that and not allow a renter to cancel an appointment that is past the cancellation deadline. Now, if we went in and logged in as the space owner, and we went to take a look at that space, now let's try and cancel it as the owner and see what happens. Notice how we were able to delete it. So as an owner, you can always cancel the appointment or the booking for the space, even though it is past the cancellation deadline. That's up to you if you want to give your customers that level of service or not. If you want to honor that for them or extend that courtesy to them. If you don't want to, then it's completely up to you. But they can't cancel once it's past the deadline for cancellation, but you could offer them that courtesy if you want to. Now, as a space owner, you're not able to cancel bookings for a space once the time of that booking has passed. Once the time of that booking has passed, it is assumed that that booked time in the space did occur. So you would then either give a credit back if you want to that customer outside of the Boodlebag platform, or you would allow that to go through and them get charged for that time. So now let's take a look at making appointment bookings and how they secure spaces. So I'm going to use a different set of accounts to demonstrate this. So now this account, Mark Stylus, has both the shared spaces feature and the business management software. And remember how I said to do bookings, you have to have the business management software, and it's from there that you can then book appointments for your customers that then also at the same time secure a space for that appointment. So if we go into the reservation scheduler for spaces, we can take a look and see what spaces we have access to. We can also see that from going into business locations and spaces, and we can see that this particular user has access to 2 different locations, 2 different businesses, and has access to 1 space in John's Salon, and in Jan's Hair Salon also has 1 space there. Now let's take a look at customers that Mark Stylist has. Mark Stylist has a customer named Taylor, and we're going to have Taylor book an appointment with Mark Stylist. And if we let's take a look at what's in the space for now. So let's look at space Chair 5 at John's Salon. And if we look on the first, we see there are no appointments here on the first. And actually, let's do this. Let's now schedule a reservation, because I want to show you what happens when you book on top of a reservation. So we're going to reserve a time slot. Let's reserve from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. And then now let's do a booking. Okay, we're looking at Mark Stylist's calendar. And if we go to the first, we want to do a booking for Taylor. And Taylor has 4 hair appointments that she could get. Now, once the system automatically is able to determine what time slots are available and in what spaces. So it's automatically gone out and looked for times that are available. And we can pick any time, let's say 10 a.m. It already knows that these appointments are 1 hour long, so it's already set it to 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And notice how it's picked a location for this appointment, right? It's already picked Chair 5. It knows that Mark Stylist has access to Chair 5 at John's Salon, and it's already determined that this is an appropriate place for this appointment. So we don't have to go through 2 steps to book an appointment and then also secure a space for that appointment to take place. So now let's go ahead and book this appointment and secure the space in one single go. So now we have an appointment for Taylor with Mark Stylist on his calendar for 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the 1st. Now let's go and take a look at the reservation. And we want to look at that for Chair 5. Now notice now how we have 2 things booked in here under the space schedule. We have one that says RBK, which stands for Resource Booking, and the other that says RSV, which is Resource Reservation. So it's converted the single reservation of time from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., and it's taking out the time for that appointment out of that block, and now we have a booking in there and a 2 hours reservation. So essentially what has happened here is we initially first reserved the space for 3 hours, so nobody else could take that space, or we were guaranteed 1 time slot, 1 booking unit in that space during that time frame. And then later on, we went and we booked an appointment into a time that we had already reserved. And the system then took out of what we had reserved and gave us that time. If, on the other hand, we had locked that reservation, then we wouldn't have been able to take time out of it. We would not have actually been able to book an appointment in that time, because at that point in time, the schedule for us would have been full. We would have had an appointment at that time, and we wouldn't have had the opportunity to be able to book over that. So now let's try and log in as Taylor. So now with Boodlebag's business management software, your customers have the ability to do self-scheduling or self-service, of which one of them is scheduling. So they can schedule their own appointments, and the system also, because you have the business management software and you have spaces that you use shared spaces, the system would simultaneously, behind the scenes, secure a space when your customers book online. So we can come here and try to book an appointment. So you can see, because it was booked for Taylor, this is Taylor's calendar. You can see that Taylor already has an appointment on the 1st. But if we wanted to book another one, we could. We could book another appointment for Taylor with Mark Stylist. I'm going to pick a time as available. So let's see, we have 9 o'clock and then we have 11 o'clock. Notice how 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock is not available. The system knows that that time is not available, so it's not being offered. So we can say we want 11 o'clock, in which case it gives us 11 to 12, and we can book that appointment. It tells us where it's going to be, right? So the system automatically knows where is available, and it's selected that location for this appointment. And we go ahead and we book it. So now we have 2 appointments for Taylor with Mark Stylist on the 1st. If we now log out and go back in as Mark Stylist, so now this is the business account for Mark Stylist. And we go to Chair 5. We can see that we have now 3. We have 2 bookings and 1 reservation. Remember, initially we blocked out 3 hours and then booked 2 appointments within those 3 hours. Now understand, you don't have to initially reserve the space before you do a booking. You can do a booking directly, in which case it just reserves the space directly, right, through a booking, rather than going to first of all reserve a space and then book. You can do everything straight from a booking, or you have the choice to reserve the space first and then do a booking, which will then book over the reservation that was initially made. So let's actually do one of those. So if we go back in as Taylor, and we try to book, say, for the 2nd. And let's pick 1 p.m. And it's going to give us 1 p.m. to 2 in Chair 5. And we say book. Okay, so remember initially we only blocked out from 10 to 1 on the first. We didn't block anything out. We didn't do any reservations on the second, but now we have an appointment booked on the second. If we log out and we go back in as Mark, and we look at our schedule, of course we have to pick the space. We can now see we have a booking on the second from 1 to 2 and no reservations on the second. So like I was saying earlier on, you could either reserve the space first, that way you secure that you're going to have the times that you like, and then later on have your customers book on top of those, or you can just do bookings directly if you're not concerned about what time the appointments happen. And the system will just, based on your configuration of when you work, it would then pick times within your schedule that are available and optimize that and offer that to your customers for appointments. Now I'm going to log out and log back in as the customer. So if we log back in as Taylor, and I entered in the password incorrectly, let's do it again. Okay, and we can see the times that we have. Now, what happens if we want to cancel an appointment? So by default, the system will not allow a customer to cancel an appointment if it's within 24 hours of the appointment time. So it has to be outside of 24 hours, so at least more than 24 hours before the appointment for it to be allowed to be canceled. So if we try to cancel this appointment, which is outside of 24 hours, but then inside of the 48 hours to cancel the space booking, what happens? So I'll go over that again. The customer is allowed to cancel because it's more than 24 hours for their appointment, but we have already booked a space that does not allow us to cancel inside of 48 hours. So what happens? And what's going to happen is the space is going to stay booked, but the appointment would be canceled and essentially be turned into a reservation. So remember that these two right now are bookings. I'm going to cancel one of them. The customer will be able to cancel this. Okay, notice it's gone. So it's outside of 24 hours, so the customer can cancel, but it's inside of 48 hours, so we shouldn't be able to cancel the space booking. So if I log out and I go back in as Mark, and we go to Chair 5. Notice now that we have from 11 to 12, it's now a reservation, no longer a booking. So again, the reason why that happened is this particular space is configured to not allow cancellations inside of 48 hours to the booking. So once it's under 48 hours, that space is locked in for whoever has reserved it. But the customer was allowed to cancel because it was outside of 24 hours to cancel their appointment. So their appointment successfully got canceled, but the space reservation or the space booking was still secured, and this customer is going to get, this particular business is going to get charged for that reservation of the space. Now again, you have the flexibility as a space owner to specify whatever your policy is for cancellation, but this is the behavior that would happen to ensure that your cancellation policy is always enforced. So now if we log in as the renter business and we went into the appointment scheduler, I just want to show you a couple of things here. So if we wanted to book an appointment for Taylor, notice how the system has selected different appointment times, and each of these appointment times, it's identified a space to go along with that. We can override that by selecting a different space that we choose. So if I choose a different space, it's going to then give me times that that space is available. So again, this is with the business management software, some of the functionality that is available while you're booking appointments and managing spaces through booking appointments. So if I pick that, it's now at a different space than it initially suggested for me. The system does have some intelligence built into it to suggest the best location for you, but of course you have the ability to override what the system selects for you. So those are some of the features of the space scheduler and the appointment scheduler as it relates to managing securing time in shared spaces for your business. In our next tutorial, we're going to cover billing and payment collection. So see you in our next tutorial.